So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday we did a video talking about the number 2 overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft in Aiden Hutchinson. Talked about his strengths, talked about the role he would play in Detroit, and talked about why he was the perfect player for the Detroit Lions. But the other player drafted in the first round we have yet to touch on very briefly. We have only talked about Jameson Williams a little bit thus far when he was initially drafted, but today I want to go a little bit more in depth. I want to talk about his explosiveness. I want to talk about what he brings to the Detroit Lions. I want to talk about why the Detroit Lions traded up from 32 to 12 in order to acquire this particular wide receiver, and of course we're going to grade the trade along the way. So with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get into talking about the number 12 overall pick in Jameson Williams. However, before we get to that, I do want to talk about the trade that happened in order to acquire the Alabama wide receiver. The Detroit Lions, once wide receivers started to fall off the board, decided that they needed to go up and grab their guy. Garrett Wilson went at number 10. Chris Olave went at number 11. Drake London went with the number 8th overall pick. And the Detroit Lions felt like if they did not make a move right then and there, they were going to miss out on one of the draft's elite wide receiver prospects. So they bundled up a couple of picks, including pick 32, 34, and 66, and traded with the division rival Minnesota Vikings in order to receive pick 12 and pick 48 as compensation. Now, this pick may seem lopsided, and this pick may seem like the Detroit Lions gave up a lot of value to move up to acquire Jameson Williams, but when you really look at it, you can essentially break this trade down into the fact that the Lions spent a second round pick. They spent pick 34 in order to move and improve pick 32 to pick 12, getting 20 spots gained in the NFL Draft, as well as improving pick 66 to pick 48, a mid third round pick to an early second round pick. So with that being the case, the trade looks really, really good from that standpoint, knowing that you jumped over 40 spots of position in the NFL Draft in exchange for pick 34 is a phenomenal trade by Brad Holmes, right? You jumped up 20 spots in the NFL Draft with a division rival without having to give up a future first round pick. I mean, overall, I think it was one of the best trades in the 2022 NFL Draft, one of the biggest moves made by a team. They didn't have to give up a first round pick. They didn't have to, really give up a future first, and they still jumped 20 spots in the NFL Draft in just the first round alone, not even talking about the improvement from 66 to 48. Overall, I thought this trade was an absolute A+. I think Brad Holmes absolutely won this deal, and knowing who the Detroit Lions walked away with makes the deal even sweeter. Now, getting onto the actual player that was drafted with that 12th overall selection, Jameson Williams was arguably the best wide receiver in college football a season ago, and he was undoubtedly the most explosive and fastest wide receiver in college football a season ago, standing at 6'2", 189 pounds, and last year having 79 receptions with the Crimson Tide for 1,572 yards and 15 touchdowns. His best game a season ago was the SEC Championship versus the Georgia Bulldogs, a historic defense that saw 15 players drafted, not all 15 from the defense, but saw at least 11 players from that defense drafted a season ago. And in this last class, the Georgia Bulldogs defense set a record for most players drafted by a team ever. It was arguably the best defense ever, and it was statistically one of the top 5 defenses in college football history. Going into the SEC Championship, the Georgia Bulldogs allowed less than 11 points per game, and they had not allowed a 100-yard receiver, I believe, all season. But that all ended when Jameson Williams stepped on the field in Atlanta, Georgia. Jameson Williams, against arguably the greatest defense in SEC history, put up 7 receptions, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was his second most productive game on the season, and I would say it was his most impressive performance of the season. His other most impressive performance was where he had 8 receptions for over 150 yards and 3 touchdowns versus a top 10 Arkansas team that shocked the SEC a season ago with how good and how competitive they were as a football team. His best games came against the best competition, right? A highly ranked Miami team at the time, he absolutely dominated. A highly ranked Georgia team, he absolutely dominated. Same thing goes with Arkansas. Same thing goes with every team Alabama played last year. If they were a good defense, Jameson Williams upped his game and played even better. And even against the best defensive backs in college football, even against the best defenses of all time, Jameson Williams simply dominated the college football world a season ago. And it's not just a one-year wonder type thing either. Jameson Williams, even dating back to Ohio State, averaged over 17.7 yards per reception through his first 2 years, averaging 18.7 yards in his freshman year and 17.9 yards in his sophomore campaign. It just so happened that he only had 15 receptions in 2 years at Ohio State, and he finally got an actual target share where he got 79 targets with the Alabama Crimson Tide. And this is not to take anything away from Jameson Williams, but that Ohio State team was absolutely loaded with first-round wide receivers, and if any of them left, if any of those guys had transferred to Alabama, they all would have put up very similar numbers because that's how good the wide receiving core was. If Garrett Wilson was the one to transfer, he would have had that top-tier season. If Chris Olave had transferred, same story. If Jackson Smith and Jigba would have transferred, it would have been the exact same story. So yes, Jameson Williams was the 4th wide receiver at Ohio State, but that does not mean he was not a first-round quality wide receiver. He was easily the most explosive player in college football a season ago and showed even at Ohio State that if he was given an adequate amount of targets, he would have put up just as good, if not better numbers than all of his teammates in Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, and of course Chris Olave, 2 of whom have already been drafted higher than him and 1 of whom will likely be drafted in the top 10 next year as well. There were 4 top 10 wide receivers, 4 top 15 wide receivers on that Ohio State roster in 2020. It just so happened that Jameson Williams didn't have the greatest chemistry with Justin Fields. It just so happened that Justin Fields clicked a little faster with Chris Olave, clicked a little faster with Garrett Wilson, and clicked a little faster with Jackson Smith and Jigba. That is not to say that Jameson Williams is a bad football player. He just needed the right opportunity, the right situation, and an adequate target amount in order to show the college football world what he was truly capable of on a large scale production, and that's exactly what he did at the University of Alabama. He is arguably the fastest player to come out of college football in a very, very long time. Running a 4.4 40-yard dash just 3 weeks off of an ACL injury, he has burner speed. He said himself that he thinks he would have run the fastest 40 of all time if he were able to compete at the NFL Combine and if he was not to tear his ACL in the College Football National Championship. Now, what is Jameson Williams bringing to the Detroit Lions? Well, he's bringing speed. Of course, he is arguably, as I said, the fastest player in college football and maybe potentially even the fastest player ever to come out of college football. Again, he thinks he would have ran the fastest 40 of all time, and I am 100% going to believe that he would have ran at least a low 4.2 and would have at least competed to finish top 10, maybe even top 5 in the 40-yard dash all time if he were able to compete. Jameson Williams is not just a deep threat, though. He's not just a guy that's going to outrun defensive backs. He is a really, really clean route runner, which is not something you see with a lot of speed guys, right? He is somebody that has really good body control. He can, really adjust on routes. He can fake. He knows how to drop his shoulder. He knows how to fake his hips. He is really, really good at these subtle details of getting open in the NFL, and you saw that versus Georgia, right? The big touchdown he had in the SEC championship game, it was a little double move, right? He sank his hips, the DB bit on it, and he just exploded far away. And as soon as he had that step, you knew it was over because there is no cornerback in the college football ranks or even in the NFL that's going to catch up to 4.2 speed once you have a step on him with leverage and with him being stacked on top of the defensive backs. Now, the big thing with Jameson Williams is his injury concern. I truly believe that if Jameson Williams did not tear his ACL, he would have been a top 5 to top 10 pick. I think he would have been the number 1 wide receiver taken in the 2022 NFL draft class. And I think if he was 100% healthy, we're not even debating who the number 1 wide receiver is in this class because he was that good a season ago that I think he had the best skill set. I think he had the hardest skill set to replicate. And I think he had the best skill set in order to translate to the NFL. Routes, separation, speed, hands, yak ability. Those are all things that he brings to the team. Yes, he's not a jump ball wide receiver, but Jared Goff's not really great at throwing the jump ball anyway, right? He's great at guys that separate. He's great at getting the ball to guys with separation and great at getting the ball to players that get open and players that make plays after the catch. That's what Amon-Ra St. Brown did great a season ago. That's where Josh Reynolds really helped Jared Goff excel a season ago, was the deep ball and creating separation downfield. That's where you saw the Detroit Lions part. That's where you saw the Detroit Lions offense really take a step forward as far as passing and attacking a downfield a lot more often. Jameson Williams is going to be another step to open up that passing game, and I think he's going to help Jared Goff see maybe his best season as a pro ever. Now, again, the injury concern is a very real concern. However, I've been reading articles and I've been doing research, and it seems like he wants to be ready and that they have a goal for him to be ready for the start of training camp. And the doctors, from what I've seen, I read an article just this morning saying that he will be back to 100%. He will be in tip-top shape, and he will be the exact same player, if not even better, by the time he's back to 100%. So we're expecting the 100% of Jameson Williams we saw at Alabama. We're expecting the same wide receiver to return that we saw play in the Crimson Tide and the Scarlet and Gray. We are expecting that big play wide receiver that understands the subtlety of routes. We're expecting the separation machine that is Jameson Williams, and I think he's going to slide in very well here. I don't think he's going to be just a deep threat. I think he's going to be the absolute wide receiver 2 next year once he gets back on his feet, once he gets back into playing shape. And I think by mid-October, you're going to see the Jameson Williams that we got out of Alabama. We're going to see the Jameson Williams that runs a 4-2. We're going to see the Jameson Williams that absolutely torched the greatest college football defense of all time. And until then, the Detroit Lions wide receiver core isn't that bad. DJ Chark is 6'4" and runs a 4.3 40-yard dash. He is not as fast as Jameson Williams, but is a Pro Bowl wide receiver with veteran experience that will absolutely help open up the deep game. Our other wide receivers, Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver that opened up the deep passing game a season ago and is Jared Goff's security blanket. Other wide receivers, Quintez Cephas, who was on pace for a career year before a shattered collarbone. Amon-Ra St. Brown, arguably the rookie of the year last year for the Detroit Lions. Their best offensive weapon all season is also on that roster, as well as Khalif Raymond, who developed some pretty good chemistry and is also a really fast, speedy deep threat that can create separation down the field. At this point, Jared Goff has all the weapons to succeed. On top of those guys, of course, the Detroit Lions have TJ Hockenson and DeAndre Swift, and if you look at just the weapons that the Detroit Lions are giving Jared Goff, if you look at just the offense, I think this offense can finish top 10 next year. If Jared Goff plays like the second half of the season last year, the Lions can finish top 10. They have a really good young running back that also has receiving capabilities. They have a top 7 tight end when he's healthy and on the field. They have arguably a top 10 wide receiving core in the NFL, and at the very worst, it's a top 15. And they have arguably a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. Worst case scenario, they are a top 10 offensive line if injuries hit them hard once again. This offense is built for any quarterback to succeed. With the offensive mind of Ben Johnson coming in, a guy that absolutely saved the Detroit Lions offense late in the season a year ago, I can't see this offense failing next year. Even if Jared Goff doesn't play elite, even if Jared Goff plays next season like he finished the season last year, right? If we get the last 7 games of Jared Goff for a 17-game span, that team can win 8 to 9 games. That team can put up a top 10 offense in the NFL. That team can average 25 to 30 points a game. That team can be a great offense, and with some of the defensive additions, that team and that offense can absolutely take us to the playoffs. And I know it's going to be crazy to think that, okay, the Lions, after going 3-13-1, after having the 2nd overall pick in the draft, can genuinely make the playoffs, but this team is built to win. It really, really is. It's a young team. It's a hungry team with Dan Campbell as their head coach. They're a team that have absolutely zero quit in them. And with this wide receiving group, with these offensive weapons and a top 5 offensive line in the NFL, this offense has all the makings to take a huge step forward. And once Jameson Williams 100% and back, once Jameson Williams is 100% back and healthy, I think you're going to see this offense absolutely explode in the 2022 NFL season under new offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. With all of that being said, that is IFGAS today. Let me know what you guys think about Jameson Williams down in the comments below. I truly believe he's the missing piece of this offense. I think that our offense is going to be good for the first couple of weeks before he's 100% healthy. And once we get the Alabama version of Jameson Williams, our offense is going to start putting up a lot of points. They're going to start winning a lot of shootouts if it comes down to that, and they're going to start winning a lot of football games. With all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Again, let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the number 12 pick. What would you grade the trade, and what would you grade the actual pick? I'd be very curious what you guys think. But with all of that being said, that is all for you guys today. I give this pick an A. I think it's an A trade. I think it's an A+ trade and an A player. Overall, very good first round by Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions. But with all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.